All right, what a crazy 2026 so far. Just in the first month, we've had the Somalian daycare scams and frauds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And of course, we have the capture of the Venezuelan president, Maduro. And of course, what we're talking about today, the various Minnesota unfortunate shootings. Now, of course, I think personally, it's unfortunate that these things had to happen. I don't think, they should have been shot. There could have been other ways of, handling the situations. But I also think there's a, responsibility on the other side as well. Now we're going to watch some of these clips that have been happening
This
so
is a
far.
moment the news movement filmed on January 13th in Minneapolis, showing a man who appears to be Alex Preddy interacting with federal immigration agents 11 days before Border Patrol shot and killed him. Our footage was analyzed by the BBC, whose facial recognition technology confirmed his identity to a 97% degree of accuracy. On the morning of January 13th, our team received a tip that federal agents were blocking a street at the corner of East 36 and Park Avenue in Minneapolis. We arrived around 10:15 a.m. We saw observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles. When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground. During the altercation, agents fired tear gas and pepper balls into the crowd. They continued to hold the man down before they retreat, and he walks away. The man in our footage is wearing a similar outfit to what Preddy was wearing on the day he was killed. What appears to be a gun is also visible above his waistband. Here, he continues to stand at the scene. On the day he was killed, the Department of Homeland Security claims Preddy, a 37-year-old ICU nurse, approached officers holding a handgun. That claim has been contradicted by analysis of bystander videos from multiple news investigations, which concluded that Preddy was holding a phone, not a gun, when he was pinned to the street.
Come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
All right, so in both instances, I feel like, obviously, again, did they deserve to die? No. Was there other ways that could have gone about it? Of course, again, I think there is some responsibility that falls upon the people, the citizens as well. And first up, we have a interesting take here by Walter Hudson, which is he's actually one of the representatives from the state of Minnesota. So let's watch his take on it and see what he's got to say.
Let's start with the gun. Yes, in Minnesota, if you have a permit, you can carry a firearm. That's absolutely true. But every concealed carry instructor in this state will tell you the same thing. The moment you choose to carry a firearm, your responsibility goes up, not down. You don't become more entitled to engage in confrontation. You actually become more obligated to avoid it. Here in Minnesota, we have what's called a duty to retreat, which means if a judge later decides after the fact that you could have reasonably avoided a conflict, even if you felt threatened at the time, you could still go to prison for using your firearm. That's not theory. That's the real law here in this state. And anyone who teaches carry knows it. So the idea that a carry permit somehow entitles someone to walk into an active area of federal law enforcement, get into a physical confrontation with armed agents, and then claim, well, I had the right to be there. That's not how any of this works at all. If anything, being armed creates an elevated duty to stay away from such volatile situations. Their decision to fire never would have been made if Preddy had maintained appropriate distance, not charged forward, complied with lawful orders, stopped resisting, and not maintained a threatening posture. He made those choices, which led to the officers making theirs. So the conversation becomes dishonest if it only asks, did Preddy have the right to do X? Instead of asking, did Preddy act in a way that someone with those rights is expected to act under the law? Because rights without responsibility aren't liberty. They're license for chaos. And when chaos meets armed law enforcement, people are likely to die. If you want to carry, you must avoid confrontation. If you want to film, you must avoid interference with lawful operations. If you want to protest, you must avoid impediment. Those aren't my political opinions. Those are the laws of our land. And pretending otherwise doesn't honor Preddy. It endangers the next guy who thinks that some slogan will protect him from the predictable consequences of his actions. The tragedy here isn't just what happened, it's how people in influence are talking about it, and what the public is inferring from those misguided and inaccurate comments. The public is being taught by far too many, you're entitled to walk into danger. No, you're obligated to stay out of it. And until we start talking about that part, we're not talking about what actually matters.
Hear that Alex Preddy's last words were,
All right, so here we have the legal, which I'm actually a big fan of his. I watch plenty of his videos. I like the fact that, he typically sticks to the facts and, he doesn't get too emotional about things. But this was right after the Alex Preddy shooting. I feel like he, made the video right after it without getting all the facts. So, I found it kind of interesting how his reaction came about just right after the shooting, again, without knowing all the facts, and, again, kind of putting into play, again, one's responsibility to act the way you should act around, this whole sort of situation. So let's watch.
are you okay? When she said to the woman that was next to him, who had been pushed down by the ICE or CBP officer who was acting unhinged, where Alex Preddy just has his phone out and his left arm is free. I think those were his last words, and I think those were his last acts, was trying to help the woman that was pushed down by the man in the green sweatshirt, who I think eventually was the first agent who shot him. And like I said, I'm not going to go frame by frame, but to my eyes, the last thing that Alex Preddy did was to help others. And look,
Arrived around 10:15 a.m. We saw observers shouting at the agents as they walked back to their vehicles. When they started driving away, the man kicked their taillight. An agent then got out of the vehicle, grabbed him, and pushed him to the ground.
Happened. Now, I want to make one thing perfectly clear. There are some that have suggested.
So yeah, as you see, the legal kind of, I feel like, came into a conclusion where, perhaps Alex Preddy wasn't so innocent. Again, did he deserve to get shot? No, but again, I strongly believe that 99.9999% of people, go about their day-to-day lives without spitting at either officers, let it be ICE informants, DEA agents, FBI, even a security guard, let alone kick government property and damage it. So, so here we have an interesting take by another lawyer, William K. Kirk. He's got a YouTube channel as well, and he kind of emphasizes on the part of doing your duty as to being a responsible citizen, especially when you're going to be carrying a gun, which you're allowed to do. So let's see his take on it.
That, hey, merely possessing a firearm while contacting law enforcement is a great way to get yourself killed. I strongly disagree with that statement. There are very few, if any, incidents of people just being shot and killed for merely lawfully possessing a firearm. No, oftentimes it is actually the behavior they're engaged in simultaneously to possessing the firearm that often turns out to be the problem. And that's what I kind of want to focus on today. And the reason I want to focus on it today is that the Patty Murrays and all the other liberals out there in the world immediately wanted to say this was cold-blooded murder and proof that we're living in a totalitarian state. But the question I want to ask all of you is, are we really moving towards a totalitarian state, or are we already living in an anarchist state? Because every one of these tragic yet preventable incidents are all precipitated by what? That's right, illegal activity of those that ultimately turned out to be the victims. And when I say victims, America, what I mean is they are in fact victims of their own poor choices. And that is actually the great segue for what I want to really talk about here, because let us remember that all of this activity, as dangerous, as irresponsible as it is being advocated for and promoted by who? That's right, local politicians right there in that community and elsewhere. You literally have not only local politicians, but politicians on the national level advocating for unlawful, dangerous, and oftentimes felonious behavior. And anyone who's advocated to stop these deportation efforts by whatever means necessary ultimately has some blood on their hands as well. And you can take a look at other types of law enforcement instances that were controversial at times. For example, in the 80s and 90s when the DEA and LAPD were kicking in the doors of crack houses all the time. You can take a look at how federal authorities went and rounded up some of the January 6th defendants. But at no time in either of those two moments was there literally an organized effort of people who oftentimes have driven in from the suburbs, from their cushy little bedroom communities into other communities to go out there and intentionally thwart, obstruct, and oftentimes place federal law enforcement officers in danger. This is not an advocacy for the immigration policies because we don't need to get into that here. What this is an advocacy for sanity. Is there an opportunity for people who are opposed to this to fight these immigration and deportation efforts? There absolutely is. But those battles occur either in the courtroom or in the halls of Congress, not on our streets.
But let me give you my take on this.
All right, so as you overheard, again, there is a responsibility that you have when you have a gun. Up next, we have Michael Francesi, which is he's the opposite of what you just seen. He's not a politician and he's not a lawyer, but this guy's actually a former capo of the Colombo crime family back in the 1980s. Obviously, he's gone through, a bunch of crazy stuff, been locked up. He'll kind of explain a little bit of that, but let's see his take on, what's happening.
And this has nothing to do with Democrat, Republican, whatever. This is my take on all of this, and I'm going to go all the way back to George Floyd really quickly. I've been arrested 18 times. 18 times. I've been indicted 7 times, tried 5 times, been in prison, the whole bit. Every single time I was arrested by a police officer holding a gun, I did one thing: put my hands out in front of me or behind me. They put the handcuffs on, I got in the car, and I went through the process. That's what you do. When you resist arrest or you do something to get away from the cops that are having guns on them, cops that are trained, to kill you if they need to, this is their training, or to put you down in some way, why would you fight with them? Why? It makes no sense. If you want to protest, protest. There is a legal and safe way to protest. But to be in your car driving off when somebody's knocking on your door, a guy with a gun, and you're practically maybe running him over, and again, I don't know, I'm not going to dissect the video. But if this situation is even remotely possible, why are you messing with it? That's all I'm saying. Get out and protest the right way. And you don't have to worry about stuff like this. And I'm going back to George Floyd. And I'm going to tell you this. It was tragic what happened to George Floyd. Nobody wanted to see him die. Yes, it's old news. But the aftermath of George Floyd, come on. This was a career criminal. A career criminal who was whatever. But I learned right then and there, you don't go put an act of violence against a cop. You can't win. I learned it at that age, 19 years old. So the next 18 times that I got arrested, here you go, officer, or FBI agent, whatever the hell you are, take me down. I'll go through the process. You can't win. And these idiot politicians on top that are telling you, okay, to resist arrest and to go after the ICE agents, they don't care about you. They're idiots. They're self-serving, hypocritical morons. I'm sorry. And I can say it like this because they're causing people to die. It's not Trump. Trump is sending his agents out there to do their job, not to kill people, to arrest people. I get so upset because they get up there and they twist it and they're blaming Trump. Let me tell you something, Tim Walz and all you ineffective people out there that are running these governors, Newsom, Pritzker, all of you people. The only reason Trump is sending people into your community is because you failed. Chicago, Pritzker, you want to, every weekend people are dying for years. Years. You're not doing a damn thing about it. That's why there's police and agents in there on the federal side to protect the people that you're not protecting. The same thing with Tim Walz. The same thing with Newsom. If they...
So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. So for the most part, it seems like the sentiment, and I think what should be learned from all this is to, try to stay as far away as possible for any of this. There's a certain way to protest. There's a certain way to try to battle this. Again, from the videos, 99.99% of people are not doing what some of these people are doing, which is unfortunately putting themselves in a situation where, obviously the outcomes that happen. Now, again, I'm not saying they deserve to be, shot. They deserve to be killed. It's very unfortunate. I also read the other side is wrong. They have tasers, they have pepper spray, they have, multiple ways to deal with the situation. But again, this is nothing new. This reminds me of the Sonia Massey shooting. For those guys who aren't familiar with it, you guys can look it up. But basically, a woman calls the cops because she thought she heard some sort of perhaps burglars outside her home. Cops show up. They go inside. Everything's fine. She's having a perfectly fine conversation with them. She goes to the stove. She has a pot of water. She says, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus," to the cop being at least 12, 15 feet away from her. And for some reason, the cop thought he was in danger and shot her to death right then and there. Now that is an even more tragic one because there was no sort of altercation. Everything was calm. Again, if you're not familiar with it, I suggest you look it up, or I can make a video on that as well. But yeah, hopefully this year gets better. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.